Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Appian Community YouTube channel. I'm Jenny, and I'll be your host for today's live stream. If you're new here, we publish developer-focused learning content every week, so hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Today, we're diving into the document record type, a new way to manage your documents in Appian. So let me hand it over to Pete and Mike, our product experts, who will be leading today's conversation.
How's it going?
How are you?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Pete.
Sure. I'm Pete Lewis. I'm a senior product manager at Appian. I've been at Appian for about 10 years, and the last 6 years I've been working in product management on improving the way that people use data in their applications. And I've been really excited the last 9 months to be working on how we can utilize documents with data in our applications through record types.
Amazing. And Mike?
Awesome. Yeah, I'm Michael. I have been with Appian for the last 6 years, working both in implementation, but also with our partners on where to deliver and find value with Appian. So I've had quite the hands-on experience with our product for customers in the US as well as over here in the UK. And I'm excited to help walk Pete through what we're doing today and see everything that it has to offer. So looking forward to it.
Amazing. We're really excited to have you here today. And before we get started and hand it over to Pete to give us a general overview, I do want to remind everyone that you can ask any questions in the chat in the live stream, and our experts here take advantage of them. Ask any of the questions that you have, and we will be answering them live. So back over to you, Pete.
Yeah, absolutely. So to give you a little bit of an overview of what we'll be covering today, let me dive into the history of documents with Appian and how we plan to improve them with integrating with record types. So for some of you that may not know, one of the original parts of the platform that Appian built 20 years ago was how we could manage documents. So it's been a core part of the platform for a very long time. But it hasn't gotten a lot of changes within the last few years. For the most part, you've been managing documents by creating folders, moving documents to different places, and using the folders to define security. What we wanted to do is to use a lot of the changes that we've made recently with record types to make it easier to manage your data. Because really, if you think about it, documents are a lot like data. They have a lot of relevant metadata like a type, extension, size, name. They often need certain security rules to determine who has access to them. And we wanted to make it really easy to access those given a lot of the recent features we've done with records. So the way that we've done this is that we've now made it so that you can define certain record types to manage your documents. And once you do that, it gives you a lot of great benefits. For one, you're able to use the record level security rules to determine how to access those documents. You can also access the metadata that we have out of the box, like the name and extension, and you can use your standard queries that you use with all the rest of your records data to access that. And lastly, we've also just made it easier to manage those documents. So instead of having to create folders and move documents around, now we automatically manage where the documents are stored to make it a lot easier to set up and use them.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And are there scenarios that make sense to use this document record type?
Yeah, so one important thing to note is that there's a lot of different ways to use documents in Appian, right? Mm-hmm. Everything from using documents at runtime, like where users may be uploading or viewing documents, but also there's scenarios for using documents that are more at design time. Think about if you're creating a process model and you want to define a template that you use to then generate documents for. Really, the record documents that we're using here are more for the first use case. So for any documents that users are uploading or viewing themselves, if there's any documents like templates or branding logos or things like that that apply really more on the design side, those are still managed the previous method using folders to organize them.
All right. That makes sense to me. And we do have a use case that we're going to be showing today, but maybe we can have a little introduction on the use case here that'll showcase exactly the types of scenarios in which this makes the most sense.
Yeah, and as we often do on these, I think we want to bring a good use case live for you, but instead of doing something maybe a little bit less interesting, insurance or something else that's document heavy, we're going to walk through a pet adoption use case and what that typically looks like, because almost every process that I've ever developed in Appian or worked with customers includes documents. Pet adoption is not any different than that. So today we'll look about how you can get your cute and cuddly friends adopted and how you can put them up for adoption as well. So that's what we're going to be utilizing as the use case today. So with that said, we can probably start sharing and getting into it in more detail. So here, again, typically in Appian, we're coming to a landing page. We'll go in and we'll just start kicking off an action to register a new pet. Again, I won't bore you with the details, but I'll just go ahead, select a pet that we could have. We'll name him Gus for now. We'll give him an intake date. None of this really matters, but it's important to give some personality to your furry friend.
And one thing I just want to point out, if folks haven't seen this before, this is our newest layout that we use for wizards. So this was released in 25.2, and it allows you to define a wizard layout for a form. It really expands a lot of the capabilities that you have with forms. And you can also see the enhanced header at the top, where you can add in colors, you can add different kinds of information based on the number of templates. So this is something that we're really excited about releasing and providing more flexibility in any kind of form, regardless of whether you're using documents or not.
Very nice.
Yeah, and then we'll get over to adding the documents that are so imperative for this part of the process. So I'll select my documents and I'll add those in. Again, these should be fairly similar to what you've seen from an upload, but I think what's pretty exciting is this preview here. And Pete, can you give it a little more detail about that?
Yeah, so this is brand new, coming in 25.3, so it's not even released yet. But one thing that you may notice here is that Michael uploaded those documents, and then we're immediately seeing the preview below. So this is something that was not possible before. It required an additional submission in order to see the documents. But now we're able to show you information about the documents live, even before the form is submitted. And this means that you can see images, you can access a preview of the document through a document viewer. You can also access metadata about the document. So if you wanted to see its name, description, file size, things like that, you can access those and even change it before you submit it to apply the right information.
Now, that's really cool. And I noticed, Mike, that you, I think, copy and pasted all of these documents in. So it's nice that you could preview the images so that you could verify if you have the right ones as well.
Yeah, it definitely streamlines that.
Yeah, makes it easy.
Ensuring you select the right document in the first time. We'll go ahead and we'll just create this pet. While this runs in the back end, moves all these documents. Let's just talk about how some of these folders are looking like currently. So if we go into the pet documents here, we can see all of those documents that have just been created and are now shifting around in the back end.
And one thing I just want to point out, this is an application that you could build in Appian, in any version, right? This is kind of using the older method where you can upload documents into folders and view the information here. So part of what we'll show you later on today is the new method that we'll create from scratch during this live stream, where you can see the new method of using documents as well.
Awesome. So let's do that now. Let's talk a little bit more about the old style then, Pete, I think, which is kind of what you were mentioning a second ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see it works here. And this is a tried and true method in Appian. Of course, we've had it for many, many years. But the current way for managing documents in this process is to identify which folders you want for each pet and update the information for those folders with the relevant documents. So you can see the create folder node there, the modify folder security, which sets the folder and determines who has access to it. And then, of course, we'll move all of those documents that we uploaded to this new folder. And part of the reason we have these processes or these nodes for adding the folder information is that that's the method in this process for how you can define security, right? So you set who has access to the folder, and then based on that folder's access, all of the documents will inherit the security of that folder. So especially if there's sensitive kinds of documents, like maybe you have vaccination records or financial kinds of information, all of that is secure, and we can ensure that if there's different access for different pets, we have different folders for each of those pets as well.
Awesome. That makes sense.
Yeah, and speaking of legacy processes, I know you're going to be diving into the new process soon, but how at a high level do you get started if you have these existing applications and these existing legacy processes? How would you get started using the document record type?
Yeah, so in a moment, I'll show you how to configure the document record type, but we actually have a great page in our documentation that provides a method for how you can move documents from the folders method to the records managed method. And really all you need to do is just move those documents to the new location, right? So if they existed in some folders before, you move them into the location associated with the record type, and then now it will start to inherit the security defined within the record type, which we'll show you in a few minutes.
Amazing.
Awesome, that makes sense as well. So shall we go ahead and start creating this document record type that you keep talking about?
Sounds great.
So we'll go ahead and we'll create a new one called adoption case for the new adoptions to allow for you to actually bring home these cuddly pets that we're talking about. Going in, we'll just give standard security as we normally do. And we'll start to tell it about the data.
Now, one thing before we even get to this, I want to point out another really exciting feature that that my teams have worked on recently is these new data source shortcuts here. So if you guys have used record types for a while, historically we had the ability to define the different source types at the top, like database, processor, web service. But we wanted to provide a method where we could easily get into your most recently used data sources. So you can actually set up connected systems to have a shortcut. And once you do that, then they will show here on this page. And it basically is one quick step to get you faster into that data source, where you can go directly to Salesforce, or if you have your own Oracle instance or your own web service, you can define all of those as shortcuts and connect to them quickly here.
Awesome. We'll keep it a little more simplified for this POC purpose, and we'll just create this from a new data model. Go ahead and kick this off. We'll just add a new field. We'll just add one here. And we'll add this for the adopter who might be coming in and wanting to bring this in. So we'll do the applicant for them, and we'll make this a type of a user. Anything you want to mention at this point here, Pete?
I think this is our codeless data modeling page, which enables us to quickly create sources from scratch. The great thing is that when you add in certain information, we can automatically add relationships to the data. So you'll notice that Michael added in the user here. What that will do later is it creates a relationship to the out-of-the-box user record type. So if you want to pull back any information about that user, like their name, email, things like that, it makes it a lot easier to do that. And we'll see in just a moment when we work with documents that we also have some related information for documents that will be easy to use as well.
Yeah, and something new that I actually noticed here is this little blue box that asks if we have documents related to this adoption case, and it actually even brings in the adoption case record type name. But could you tell us a little bit about the generate record type action that is here? It's something new that I hadn't seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the most common ways of integrating documents with a certain record type is you may have a list of documents that you want to associate. Think about this use case specifically. If I have an adoption case, I might need to upload some documents related to it. And it could be many of them. So the way that we typically would do that in Appian is to create a separate record type that you can relate together and define a one-to-many relationship between them. So if you use this generation flow, it will create this record type. It allows you to add in additional metadata like the document types. So if you check that there, and maybe we can add in a few different relevant types there.
Yeah.
And once you do that, you're basically just adding additional metadata that's relevant to each of these documents. So once you're uploading a document, providing the information about each of these, it makes it really easy to set that type.
Very cool.
Awesome. So I'll go ahead and generate this now for our use.
Great.
Awesome.
And so all this metadata, it's nice to have that because oftentimes I feel like when I open a PDF and I look at the information, it does have document type or size and a lot of additional fields that I might want to use in order to sort my documents or look at them as well.
Yeah, and we wanted it to be customizable, right? Mm-hmm. That's the power of Appian, is that we give you the ability to utilize any kind of data model you want. So we wanted to make sure that when you're adding in documents, you can decide what additional data is going to be relevant for those documents. So in this case, we gave a suggestion for adding a document type, but of course you can add in any other information that you want to as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we're getting this validation telling us that we created that successfully. So now we can just continue on with our current record that we're creating.
Yeah, and you can see on this page, it also shows those relationships. And for the adoption case documents, it'll show specifically that it's a one-to-many relationship because we could potentially have many documents per each adoption case.
And over here, we're getting our suggested record types that we can start to look at and bring in those record relationships in here. It's really streamlining how quickly you're able to bring this in.
Absolutely. Because in this case, you want to ensure that you're applying the right pet, right? You want to adopt a certain pet, so we want to pull in that information that we've already created.
And again, Appian's make it easy by telling you what it thinks the suggestion should be for that relationship based off of some smart IDs. And now we can go ahead and just add that relationship right in.
And of course, you can relate to any existing record type regardless of the source. So you could even pull information from a web service or some external system that is completely different than where we're storing the adoption case information.
Yeah, the power of our data fabric and having that agility layer. We can see, that ontological view right there. It's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll go ahead, save those changes, get this record created. Now we already have a baseline data model that we're ready to work with.
Yeah, it looks great.
So are there any other, this is a case adoption type, but have there been some interesting use cases that you've seen people use or, people request this sort of metadata, this sort of document management type?
I feel like this is used across a ton of different use cases within Appian. Mm-hmm. Even just thinking about the bread and butter kinds of things that we support, like case management, right? If I create a new support case, a lot of times I want to upload documents associated with it, right? It could be screenshots or supporting information that tell about issues that I'm having. It could be contact information. All of that is relevant to associate it with our main case. But really across the board, we see a ton of our customers that are using documents for lots of different use cases. And the nice thing is that documents in Appian are really flexible. Basically, any file that you want to upload can be a document. So it allows us to have support for a lot of different kinds of use cases.
That's awesome. So let's hop into this record type that was just created for us. We can see the relationships already spawned over here. And we can get into what that document looks like and seeing some new things on the screen here, Pete, that maybe you want to dive into more.
Yeah, so let's start with the data model and the fields on the left. So you'll notice that one of the things that we did here is we've added a field that is a document type. So this is the way that we designate that this record type is managing documents. And when you're creating new files, when you're associating files, the way that you do that is that you assign that document to this field. You'll also notice here that we've created an additional relationship for us to this document record type. This is an out-of-the-box record type that has information about our documents that is captured automatically by Appian. So you have things like the name, description, size, date created, and lots of other metadata that you might want to use. And the great thing here is that once we capture this information, now you can use it when you define any queries. So if I wanted to do something like filter to only show documents that are PDFs, well, now we have that information here in the file extension. So you can use your standard record query framework in order to filter this data. And it makes it all run through the exact same methods instead of, having something separate for documents or something like that.
That's awesome. All right, so let's go back and let's start to finish up this this record that we've created at the beginning and that we're working through right now. So shall we start by creating some record events and going through it that way? What do you think about that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Awesome. And we'll just go ahead and do the standardized out of the box, generate our record events for us, allowing this to kick off in the back end. Want to touch on anything here, Pete?
And if you haven't used this before, one of the great things about record events is that it supports our Process HQ environment. So that enables you to easily understand how your processes are running, find bottlenecks or areas of improvement. So especially for something like an adoption case, maybe we want to identify the different options or events associated with that adoption, right? Like you do an initial interview, you do some paperwork, some verifications, things like that. And by defining the events, it makes it really easy for us to identify how we can improve this process over time.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
really, I recommend using record events for all of your core record types so that way you can understand what's happening related to that data and how you might be able to improve it over time.
Very cool. Pete, I do have a question in the comments, actually, one from Karamuru. They're asking, what is the maximum size of a document that can be stored?
So the maximum size of a document in Appian is, I believe, 1 gigabyte that you can store.
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty big.
Awesome. So events kicked off. We now have those events configured. We can start going through and generating the other things that we typically do when we're creating a record. So again, we'll go through the predefined actions for just doing a create, update, and delete. We'll have our CRUD ready to go and kick off these actions. Again, we're seeing some new stuff here, Pete.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's again, this is the 25.3 site, so some of this stuff is not even released yet. But what you can see here is that we've added more capabilities to the generation flows, so you can decide exactly what information you want to display. So for instance, we have different relationships where I can decide, do I want to return relevant information for my one-to-many relationships? So yeah, probably we can select the adoption case documents there. And then on the next page, you can see this wizard, which shows even more information. So you can choose templates based on what data you have, and then it will use our new form layouts to define how those display. So you can even see that since we selected a one-to-many relationship, it automatically chooses or suggests the wizard style because it will give you those multiple steps to configure it.
Yeah, this looks great. I mean, I feel like even compared to 2020 when I started working in Appian, this is so much easier. And with our constant releases, you just keep getting new features that make it easy to build an Appian.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when records were first released and there were like
2
tabs there for your data and some for security, and that was what you were working with. So this is insanely easy to get something up and running.
Yeah.
All right. We got our CRUD actions, and let's just finish it off, and we'll go ahead and create a summary view here. So going into the views, we can just generate that record view.
Yep, and you'll see a similar thing here where you can decide which related records you want to return. So it makes the most useful option for displaying your summary view.
Awesome. We'll take the documents again, I think. Go ahead and let this generate some more things for us. I mean, how many objects do you think we've created so far with about 50 button clicks, not even 20 button clicks? Probably just as many objects as button clicks, I think.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Nice.
Here we are. We now have it. We have our pet adoption case kicked off, run through, we've created everything, and we can go ahead and save it now. Anything else you want to touch on before moving on here?
I think this looks great. Let's see what it looks like.
Awesome. Should we see what that record list here has? Okay, here, our fun old tempo site, but we can go in and check out that new adoption case from this perspective. Might as well make myself the applicant here. And we don't have the indexes for pets, so we'll take a random one for now. But if I go in and grab those same documents from before, seeing a little bit different of a view up here, Pete. Can you hop into some of this information here?
Yeah, so this goes back to us introducing the new behavior where you can update properties with your documents before even submitting the form. So what we did is in these generation flows, we actually added that capability here to make it really easy to use. So we uploaded a few different documents. If you go to expand some of the details, you can see, for instance, that it has the name, description, and type, and you can change all of these before submission. So it makes it really easy to be able to determine what the initial information was and update it all in one go.
Yeah, I mean, I remember building this out again where you'd have to do a preliminary, right? And you'd have to come back in and change these metrics if you wanted to even try to fake it.
Yeah.
Chaining those interfaces all together. So I think this is a huge quality of life improvement for anyone who has worked with documents.
100%. And we actually have another question in the comments. Thank you guys for engaging with us. Blake is asking if we still have version control on the documents.
Absolutely. So that's actually something that goes back to the very beginning of Appian, where we defined version control on documents. So basically, if you upload a new version of the document, we will maintain that version history, and you can browse back and look at the history of versions as well.
Yeah, I actually noticed in the document record type, they had also a number of versions. So you can see how many new versions were made in a single document. So it's really, really easy to see all of that data.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So we either hop in this adoption case, see what that comes starting to look like, seeing everything that's been pre-populated for us out of the box. Ready to go.
And these are our relatively new, within the last year or so, templates for the summary view, right? So we're not just generating a list of fields, we're really putting them into different sections, we're adding the actions, we're adding relevant related information like the context and event history, so you have that key information here. And one of the coolest things, if you take a look at the list of documents, and maybe we could drill into one of those documents, Michael. You can see here that since we have the context that this record type has document information, we're able to set up these summary views to really look great so that it displays an image of that document, it displays all the details on the right, and it is not just a generic user interface, it's actually something that displays the relevant information about that document.
Yeah, no, this looks great. And it makes it easy instead of having to start and stare at a blank screen. You could accelerate that design process. And it even has a download button, I noticed, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Start to download all of our doggo images. Should I hop into one of these interfaces, though, that was created for us? Maybe that create or update interface here. again, we can see everything that Pete was talking about, how things are created.
Yeah, we've got that wizard layout. One thing that I wanted to point out about this that's pretty cool, it validates to check that you have the information here, but you can also, in design mode, you can skip ahead. So if you go to the wizard layout, you can actually go back and forth between the different steps, which makes it pretty easy. I think if you scroll down to the bottom.
Yeah, Pete's even ahead of me here because I don't even know where this
is. Yeah, if you just click on each of those steps, you actually don't even need the validations to be done, and you can move back and forth between those steps, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, as someone who's built many POCs and want to be able to test back and forth, that is a nice game changer for validation. Instead of having to create a whole fake demo data button in order to get that going.
Yeah.
So shall we talk about the file upload a little bit as well?
Anything absolutely. Yeah. So if you scroll down a bit in design mode, you'll notice that there's now a new option there. Or sorry, I think, there we go. So historically, we've always had the target is a folder, right? You saved all your documents to a folder. But we've introduced this new option for a record type. So in the cases where you have documents associated with your record type, now you can just choose record type and associate it there. You'll notice this is an internal site, so it's still using this document folder for record type, which we introduced recently, but you should see once we go GA that the generation flow will automatically pull in the relevant record type.
That's awesome. Okay, well, with that said, let's I guess go into some of the other things that were created for us as part of this. So maybe we can compare this to the original process model that we were looking at the beginning.
Yeah, because if you remember the original one, we had all of those additional items for folders, right? And because the record type manages the documents, you don't need any of those anymore. So really, we just run the start node. In this scenario, it has a delete records because we're actually reusing the same process for all of the actions. But really, in scenarios where you're adding new cases, all you need to do is complete the start form and write your records, and that's it.
Yeah, that is, I mean, you can actually read the things that are on the screen here, what we're going on over here. So I'd say that's quite a big improvement as well.
Yeah, much cleaner. And when you're onboarding, new developers too, it makes it easy to understand what's going on, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And what do we have left? We want to hop into summary screen real quick.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Yeah, and one cool thing here, so remember the documents, once you define the document field, it has information about the related document data as well. So let's say that in this grid, you wanted to display information about the file extension or something like that. Because it's record data, you just query it all through your standard queries, right? So like maybe if you wanted to change this this display value, Michael, you could just clear that one, and then you should be able to reference the any of the properties that we want. So you could pull from like the document properties down there and return the size of the extension or something like that, right? And we have all of that information because we've automatically synced it when you uploaded the documents.
And I do actually have a question in the comments. So Monica's asking, can any of the documents be edited?
Yeah, so the documents can be, it basically works the same as the historical documents in Appian. So if you wanted to edit any of them, you could upload a new version if you wanted to. There's also processes that can make edit, or process nodes that can make edits to the documents. So if you wanted to use certain smart services that make changes to the documents, you can do those as well. And actually, one thing that we've introduced recently is the Microsoft Document Editor plugin. So that even allows you to edit documents in line from Appian. So if you had a Microsoft file like Excel or Word or PowerPoint or something like that, then you can actually edit those directly through that plugin, and it will make the changes to Appian and save those as well.
Very cool.
Awesome. So let's go back. Maybe one last couple of talking points. Pete, I think you've highlighted quite well as we're going through this, but if we hop back into this case document record that we created at the beginning, can you tell us a little bit about, I see some new things here on the left-hand side. So can you dive into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so let's maybe go down to record level security first. So the record level security is essentially the security for the document, right? So once you define a document field within your record type, now you can add in rules to determine who has access to this. So by default, when we created this, it created a security rule that says, if you have access to the adoption case, now you could see all of its associated documents. But you could add in other kinds of conditions if you want to as well. You'll see in this case, this warning is just showing because we don't have record level security on the adoption case itself. So it's just telling you that you basically will inherit the exact same security as that.
Got it. That makes sense.
But that's at least one thing where, historically you had to use folders to define security. Now you can just define these rules instead, which should be a lot easier.
Got it.
Yeah. Again, everything is so much easier in terms of being an Appian developer. Having these warnings and making sure that it's getting ahead of you it's really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and there's a couple other things to point out there as well. The Documents tab. So this is going to give us insight into all the documents that are associated with this record type. So it makes it really easy to find information. So if you're troubleshooting or trying to understand what's going on with each record, each document, you can go in here and search, filter, browse all of the data that you need to. And you can even, if you click on any of the names, you'll see that it shows that full preview and the details here, which makes it easy to understand what's going on with each of these documents.
Very cool. And so does this make it easier to search through your documents and, maybe like we have the smart search feature in Appian. Does this metadata help with that?
Yeah, so really this page is often useful for like a designer role to go in and find information about their documents. I mean, this is through the record type designer. So it's often for like troubleshooting and things like that.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. The smart search is another really exciting feature, which is that now we're able to search information about the contents of the document. So the way that this works is that you can enable smart search here by defining what you want to search on. And it can be, Michael just highlighted it, either text fields or a document field. And if you choose a document field, what will happen is once you upload your documents, we will index the data for the contents of the document and then allow you to search on that based on any of your interfaces. And again, it uses the same kinds of queries that we use elsewhere with records. So it's really easy to be able to search on the document information.
That's awesome.
And actually, speaking of queries, we do have a question in the comments asking if we have more than 2 hops to our document record type, would it affect the querying time of the documents?
Nope, it should behave just like any other record types. We allow you to have many hops deep if you want to query, down several levels. So just in this case, for instance, we had the adoption case record type, then we had the adoption case document record type, and then we had the document system record type. So that's those 2 levels deep there. Those queries should perform pretty well.
Great. And Data Fabric, again, it's a great technology and makes things very easy to query into your data. And another question, Blake is asking if if we have to have the service enabled on our server in order to see it. I assume they are talking about Smart Search.
There are some configurations that have to be set up on the site for it to work. But once they are, there's not really additional configurations by designers, right? It's really just like a site setup kind of thing. Once it's configured, then it's good to go.
Easy.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for walking us through that. That definitely streamlines how quick you can get in documents, manage them, interact with them.
Yeah, this
awesome.
is very helpful. A great walkthrough, step-by-step tutorial. And, we have pet adoption here, but again, for any of your customers, or if you're doing an application, I feel like just following the same steps definitely will be very easy to follow.
And I will say, this stuff is new, right? I mean, we're really excited about it. We also want to hear from you. So I know not everyone is on 25.2 yet, and some of the things we showed here are 25.3, so they're still coming out in another month or so. But as you start to use us, or as you start to use these, let us know about it, right? If you have feedback, if you find things really cool, we'd love to hear about them, commenting on community or discussing during the live streams.
Awesome. Well, thank you both again so much for your time and for showing us and walking us through document record type. We really appreciate your expertise.
Thank you.
Of course, thanks.
Make a great day, everybody.
All right, let's do a few announcements before we do log off. EA is currently, we have EA, and GA will be on August 15th for 25.3. We also have the product announcement webinar on August 6th and 7th. So make sure to tune in to that according to your time zones. And the next live stream will be the release highlights. So we'll be talking through and diving a little deeper into some of those new features. So that will be on August 14th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. Thank you both so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks.